This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there is a sea of podcast options out there, and so the fact that you subscribe and you make this a destination every day, from the bottom of my heart and the team that helps put this together, we owe you big. Thank you for your written reviews and your 5-star reviews at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You help us stand out, sincerely. So thank you so much for giving this show time today. And I thank the folks at John Ruhlman's usmedicalplan.com. John is our title sponsor. He keeps the lights on, if you will. All the sponsors that you hear on this show, I thank them profusely. I think they do great work and sell great products. I know they're going to take great care of you, and I thank you for supporting them as well. Can't do it without you. Can't do it without John Ruhlman and our sponsors in the show. John wants to save you big money on health insurance. So if you're looking for cheaper rates on health insurance, or you just think, gosh, I am spending a fortune on these premiums, is there an option? Answer, yes, there is. 877-410-4321 is the telephone number. Call him. He's got like 80 different private insurers that he can research to get you the best plan. And he does all the work. This is not some bureaucratic headache that you're going to have to negotiate yourself. John does it all and saves you potentially hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars in premiums. If you're spending money out of pocket on your family's insurance, your employee's insurance, if you're a senior on fixed income, let John go to work and save you money and get you better coverage. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. A couple of days ago or last week, I don't know when, this showed up in the email box of all of us that produce programming for my employer, Salem Media Group. And that's all of us who do syndicated radio shows, podcasts, any kind of content that any of the dozens of us that do that, in both producing and hosting, we were all given an edict, courtesy of Fox News. And I assume this is an edict that's gone out to everyone in broadcasting. Not just Salem, but I should say everybody who produces programming, period, full stop. Fast Eddie, you and I do a show every day together, and every day we come in and we look through the news headlines of the day, and we look through what we think is interesting or compelling or newsworthy or noteworthy audio, and we will present it to the audience. And we've done that. I've done that way for, since I launched my very first talk show in 2004. It's always been, let's go to the audio roster, let's take a look at the newsworthy audio, and let's go to the news stories of the day. I've been doing that for 20 years. And in 20 years of broadcasting, I have never seen what Fox News has just issued as an edict surrounding this August 23rd debate. Never. And while I realize that this is a bit inside baseball, this does impact you in that all of us who produce programming and do analysis for events like the August 23rd debate, which I was fully prepared to watch, regardless of Trump's participation in it. And I was fully prepared to bring you analysis and coverage of it. And I'm now thinking I may just ignore it entirely like it didn't even happen. And I have to reconcile that with myself because as a talk show host who has prided himself on being up on the day's events and bringing you coverage of the news of the day, Fox has now basically decided that they're going to make jobs like mine and Fast Eddie's virtually impossible to do in covering this event. And so I'm saying to myself, I haven't had any conversations with Fast Eddie or anybody else in management. I'm just saying this to myself as a talk show host of 20 years. Do I want to cover August 23rd at all, whether Trump participates or not? You say, well, Stigall, why wouldn't you? Because of this memo that we just received. And I'm going to read it to you in full, just so you understand. Now, those of you not in broadcasting, haven't been in the media business, this may not fully make sense to you, but I think most of it is pretty clear. Even if you're not, you'll understand what I'm reading when you hear it. And I will just tell you that in 20 years of broadcast, covering media events, covering events that have unfolded on cable news and network news, I have never read an edict like this in my life. and it is as follows. Fox News has secured exclusive media rights to be the Fox News Republican primary debate with partners at Young America's Foundation and Rumble, taking place at the Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, airing on the Fox News channel, as well as Fox News Radio, Fox News Mobile, foxnews.com. You are hereby advised to respect Fox News' exclusive rights to the debate by not broadcasting, transmitting, selling, licensing, giving, bartering, exchanging, or otherwise disseminating the debate or any portion thereof, regardless of whether Fox News supplied you the debate or if the debate or excerpts were supplied to you by other sources. Permission to use the debate is only granted if the following restrictions are adhered to. Permission to use the debate is only granted if the following restrictions are adhered to. Would you like to hear them? There's 6. Number 1, an appropriate, unobstructed on-screen credit, courtesy of the Fox News channel, must appear on screen during the entire debate excerpt, and the debate excerpt must be introduced with an audio credit. Now, I've always done this, whether mandatory or not. It's always been a practice of mine. Video, that's obvious. But with audio, I have always said, and we're always super conscientious of crediting where our audio comes from. I've always believed that's important. If somebody's podcast or show gets a scoop, I think it's always important to give that person credit. I would expect the same courtesy extended to us. And people always do. That's just understood. That's given. You know, if Trump comes here and says something newsworthy and other people run with it, they credit the show as the source. That's not uncommon. That's not unreasonable. Here's where we start to get unreasonable. During the 7-day period, and by the way, the 7-day period starts the night of the debate and 7 days after it. So the following Wednesday. So Wednesday to Wednesday, within a 7-day window, you may not air more than a total of 3 minutes of the debate. 3 minutes. That debate's going to be what? Hour and a half long? At least? Now that's 3 minutes in total, so we could air what? 10, 30-second clips? I don't know the math. Something like that. You get my point. Whatever. You can't air any more than 3 minutes of audio, whatever that looks like. If it's Chris Christie going, good evening, Asa Hutchinson, good evening, like we'd have to clock that until we got to 3 minutes. And once we hit 3 minutes, we can't air any more than 3 minutes of the entire evening. So if Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie start having a fight, or if Donald Trump shows up at this thing and there's a big back and forth and it goes on for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, we'd cut it up. We'd present it to you typically. We'd give you a minute. I'd jump in. I'd say, okay, now listen to this part because now is where it's about to get really spicy, and listen carefully as Trump says blah, or as DeSantis makes this point. This is common. This is down in the weeds, inside baseball stuff I would not typically bore you with, but I want you to know in advance of what's going on and why this show may make a completely radical decision for the first time in its history. Excerpt footage must be taped directly from Fox News' telecast or obtained directly from Fox News and may not be obtained from any other source. Now, we have many what are called news services, preparatory services that assist us in the course of a day in providing us links to things, clips to things. There are services that literally you can pay for that help you do that. So it's rare, almost never actually, that if, Donald Trump goes on Morning Joe this morning while we're live here, it will make news today, and then tomorrow morning, we're not getting that audio from MSNBC. We're getting that audio from what we call one of our services that says, hey, did you see this with Trump and Morning Joe? Which we will then air the following morning. We'll credit that it comes from MSNBC and Morning Joe, but that's maybe not literally where we got it. Does that make sense? Fox is saying that if we air anything about their debate, it must come from them. No third-party source. Do you get where we're going here? Do you get what they're doing? I think you're picking this up already. So you have a 7-day window where you can use no more than 3 full minutes of the entirety of that debate. And after that 7 days, you're never allowed to ever, I'm going to skip ahead here for time. Under no circumstances are you allowed to ever recall that audio and play it again after the 7-day window is up. This, of all the things, is maybe the most egregious. It's all egregious. This is the most egregious thing I've ever heard. Fox says that we can never play a clip of anything that happened on this debate after the 7-day window that it aired, and that they're giving permission to air in that 3 minutes that we're allowed to use. You may use debate or excerpts thereof on internet only by way of the video embed function from foxnews.com, and we will make that video player available. Any use of the debate, except as specifically described above or as permitted pursuant to Fox News agreements with its subscribers and affiliates, will be regarded as a violation of our rights and may be subject to liability by violators under applicable laws. Fox News reserves all rights and remedies in the event of any violation of its rights. So, Fast Eddie, you're the executive producer of the show. You and I haven't really talked about this, but let's just go ahead and discuss it right now for all the audience to hear. What are we supposed to do with this? Because I don't find the parameters set for usage of and coverage of this event. I don't find these parameters acceptable as a talk show host who broadcasts to thousands of people every day. I don't find this is untenable. I don't know that you and I are able to do a show and cover this debate under these rules. I've never lived under these rules. I've never seen anything like this. And now, again, I stipulate, I understand that we're in this new era where Fox is desperate and they're clinging desperately to relevancy and kingmaker status. And so in order to do that, they've decided they're going to put their legal hands around our throats and squeeze so that I guess their thinking is they will just threaten everyone in media and tell everyone, like I'm about to tell you, that we're just not going to talk about it. We're not going to carry it. We're not going to cover it. The only place you're going to be able to see it is go to Fox. So how sad. I mean, I want you to consider what they're doing. Let me bottom line this. We can't compete. We can't keep people's interest. We're losing revenue. We're losing shares of audience. And so the only thing we have left to do is chill the entire media landscape from talking about anything that happens on our network, basically forcing people to watch our network if they want to see the event or thing that's happening. So basically, Fox News programming strategy is now, I dare you. I dare you not to watch. Fox News, watch or else, is apparently their new, I don't know if that's, we report, you decide has been replaced with where else you going to go. So this is bullying, is what it is. I don't know how else to put it. It's bullying out of desperation, because that's what bullies are. They've become the Chris Christie of broadcasting. These are their rules. They're within their right to flex if they want to. I'm still not convinced. There's something out there called fair use. This is a news event. Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida. If Donald Trump participates, he's the former president of the United States. You have former governors, you have senators that will be on that stage. These are political figures, public figures, making public comment. I understand that Brett and Martha are their moderators, so they're technically property of Fox, but I don't understand how public officials making public comment in a public debate, I don't understand how they have, I would love an attorney. I mean, I'm not going to spend the money on it. And as I said, my employer is bending over backwards to make sure that we all understand that we don't want to run afoul of Fox's legal demands. And I'm not going to do that to our employer, because I respect and care very much for the people that we work for, and they're trying their best to be conscientious. But what Fox has effectively done is told all of us in broadcasting that we're not going to be able to cover this event unless we force you to just simply watch Fox. We can come back and talk about it in the morning. Wasn't that something when DeSantis said the thing about the deal? Will be the sum total of the show. And any of you who missed it, or any of you that want to hear it again, can't do it effectively. I got to go, hey, listen, there was a really crazy moment between Christie and Trump, And if you want to see it or listen to it, you got to go to foxnews.com, is basically what they're trying to do. They're trying to make all of us that would cover the event walking advertisers for them, which isn't dumb. It's just low. It's a move born out of fear and desperation. And I've never had it. I've never worked under this. Never. This isn't like Monday Night Football. This isn't a commercial event. This is a public forum where a major political party is trying to decide who their nominee will be. This is about the next governor, the man who would or woman who would ostensibly govern the United States electorate. This is a matter of public interest. This is a news event. I think it falls under something called fair use, personally, and I still would love a lawyer to challenge this. I hope someone does. I don't know who will. I know our people won't. They've just said, whatever you want, Fox, we'll do it. So I don't know. I'm at a bit of an impasse, and I guess I'm just going to ask you. They're within their right. I don't misunderstand. They're within their right. I just think it's cheap. I think it's bullying. I think it's unseemly. I think it's desperate. We don't see this out of CNN. We don't see this out of MSNBC. I've never seen this in my career. Never heard of it. Now, this is different, as I said, than Monday Night Football. Or if Ainsley Earhart and Steve are baking in the kitchen and they got a cooking show for an hour on Fox Nation or something. That's a personal property of Fox News, produced in-house by them and their people. And that's a product of theirs. And that's a different matter. We're talking about a public debate with public officials who want to become the next president of the United States. This is not Emily Campagno drives muscle cars down the shore, or whatever their little shows are they put on Fox Nation. All right, I've said my piece. I think you get it. I am so ticked. I'm loaded for bear on this thing, Fast Eddie. And I don't know how to, I really don't know how we're going to approach it yet. I haven't decided.
No, Chris, I mean, just two things. One, I was on the phone with upper management about this. That they
It's not their fault. It's not their fault.
No.
We're not mad at anybody inside our company. No. They're just doing what they got to do, right?
But I said, you realize that this leaves me, like, I can print a transcript for Chris, and he can pretty much go through. This will be like the State of the Union address. Just like, here you go, Chris. Here's the transcribed text from last night. And you can say, okay, yeah, about an hour in, Vivek Ramaswamy said this. I said, that's not helpful at all to what we do. One. Two, when I see debate footage pop up on MSNBC and CNN, I'm going to be very angry. That's what I want to know. Who else got this decree? If you're not punishing, but if you're giving this edict to Salem, then you better give it across the board.
Yeah. Well, for instance, what you're saying is like, so in the morning, the next morning when MSNBC and Morning Joe are covering the Fox News debate, naturally, they will, because all TV does, they will put the little Fox News logo up and they'll say, audio or video, courtesy of Fox News or whatever. They'll do that. But will they be held to the same standard of they can only play 3 minutes of the previous night on their show in total? Now, again, 3 minutes alone is a lot. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but actually in our business, 3 minutes is quite a bit. A minute is a long clip. It's true. 3 minutes is... typically most clips of something that we play here will run between 20 and 40 seconds tops, sometimes a minute. But 3 minutes of audio is a lot. However, in the course of a morning, if I add together all the audio that we have, all the clips that we play, we've probably got, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes of audio some days. So you see what I mean? If there are multiple points of interest in the course of the debate, you can get to 3 minutes of audio quickly. Not all at once, but if there are several points of interest from several different candidates, you can add up to 3 minutes quickly. And, even more absurd, after the 7-day window, you're never allowed to air it again. I will never be able to say, hey, remember when Vivek Ramaswamy said on the August 23rd Fox News debate, blah, blah, blah. Remember this? Let's go back and listen to this, which I've done all my career. Can't do that. Fox says, nope, You will never be able to go back to basically once after the 7-day window, it vanishes into the ether, and the only place you will ever be able to find evidence of the Fox News debate on August 23rd is on their website, I guess. So I guess they are now going to fan out over all of cable news, all of radio, all of podcast, all of internet. The Fox News people have so invested in saving their bacon, they have decided to fan out across all of new and old media to prohibit anybody from violating their content rules. What must they be spending in lawyers? Maybe they could figure out how to secure viewers a different way. Maybe they could figure out how to secure advertisers in a different way like the rest of us. Fox News is trying to lock Tucker out of working. To me, this is a close cousin to censorship, in my opinion. This is Fox News exerting their broadcast right. It's true, but it's censorship, really. Fair use in the news game has always been a thing. As long as you credit them, it's never been an issue. This has never been a thing before. So I don't know. I don't mean to bore you folks with inside baseball, but I'm trying to explain to you that we have a real decision to make here coming up in 13 days. I don't know. Now I actually actively hope Trump does not participate. They've put me in a position where before I was sort of ambivalent about whether Trump did or didn't. In fact, most harumphers said they thought Trump should participate. Now I hope he doesn't. I hope it's just a dismal failure. I hope Trump says, no, I'm not showing up, and I hope no one watches it. And nothing would delight me more than to come here tomorrow and the next day on the 24th and pretend it didn't even happen. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has 2 brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. We bring back our great friend. A wordsmith's work is his book. He is a constitutional attorney. He's a former DOJ spokesperson before they became thugs, and joins us again for analysis on many, many matters. We can go in any one direction you'd like today, Mark, but I think I'm going to start with something you weren't prepped to talk with us about, but I know you're nimble enough to be able to jump right in on it. And I don't mean to bore this audience, but I do think it's an important point of discussion in the world in which we live today, where people are kept from sharing information, reading information, hearing information. Fox News seems to be engaged in this control freak behavior that says if you don't watch it and consume it from us, we're not going to allow anybody else in broadcasting, in digital media, to air it on their platform. Only from us and nowhere else is basically their new memo and edict as it comes down to their presidential debate on August 23rd, Mark Weaver. And so I guess from a legal perspective, I wanted to get your take on that first. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me back. This is really unprecedented. We've seen this, of course, for decades with programs like the World Series or the Super Bowl. They say you can't air that because it's a for-profit enterprise and we're the ones who paid to get the rights to it. This is the presidential debate. This belongs to everybody. This is almost always shared all over the place. In fact, I often watch debates on C-SPAN. On their website, because they'll be archived there. Certainly, Fox could claim a copyright to the entire program, and if you sought to air the entire program, then you might be in violation of their copyright. But fair use is a well-known exception to copyright law, and allows anybody to take clips and use them for educational or critical purposes to criticize what was happening. And I don't know of any way that they can limit you to a certain number of minutes, because the fair use exception doesn't limit you to a set number of minutes.
So would you counsel, I mean, if you were counseling media folks, broadcasting folks in TV, in radio, in podcasting, if you were one of their attorneys and they got this memo, do you think it's challengeable?
I do. Of course, I can't give legal advice on the air, but just speaking generally, I could say, hey, make sure you're familiar with the limits of the fair use doctrine. Certainly don't air the whole thing. Choose those parts you want to air. And if you were to be challenged by Fox, you have a pretty strong defense that, A, this is material that belongs to the public, even though you've tried to copyright it. B, to the extent that you have copyrighted it, we're allowed to use portions within the fair use exception. And I like the chances of any group that gets sued on that.
I feel like, again, I'll drop it, but I feel like this is something that everyone in our business, no matter your stripe politically, if you are in the business of providing coverage of news or commentary of news and politics in our business, whatever forum you are on, I feel like all of us are duty-bound when we're talking about presidential candidates to lock arm in arm here and say we don't shut one another out of these important discussions.
Yeah, I've been troubled by a lot of decisions by Fox News lately. They're becoming the Bud Light of news, and they continue to double down on a lot of this stuff. You'd think they'd be a little more understanding of who watches Fox News.
Yeah.
And so I scratch my head sometimes at some of the things they do.
All right. By the way, just as an aside, Axios has this piece, which is kind of funny to me because it's clear that all of this Trump legal drama, speaking of hoping to get eyeballs and ratings and attention, MSNBC, CNN in particular, they really hope that all this Trump indictment stuff juices their numbers, Mark Weaver. And Axios has this piece that people seem to be losing interest in raining indictments down on Trump. Here's the headline: Trump's legal drama loses shock value. The public's attention to Donald Trump's legal drama has declined with each subsequent indictment, according to new data pulled from across television, social media, and search activity. Americans have turned to Google in droves to find information about the topic of indictment with every new case. Searches spiked with all three indictments, but the spikes are getting smaller, indicating slowing interest. And in fact, yesterday, and I'm not going to play it here now, Jake Tapper and Charlie Sykes from The Bulwark, I might play it a little later, they're lamenting the fact their role in this. You know, gosh, do we want to turn into the OJ and the Bronco chase? Are people losing interest in this? Once upon a time, I think these people that hate Trump realized they kind of made him with their obsessive coverage of him. They're still obsessively covering him, but now people are not as interested in their obsessive coverage. And so they're having sort of an identity crisis here. Never mind the legal, the legal standing, legal footing they're standing on, Mark.
Yeah, I was walking past the newsroom when that story was being written, and I'm pretty sure I heard weeping and gnashing of teeth as they were typing that out. I think they're deeply worried that their ability to ride Trump for a little while longer before they go out of business for being so blatantly partisan, that ability appears to be going away, and I think they're genuinely worried about it.
Andy Ngo, who's been on this program before, this is a guy that I say bravely, really. It was heroism in journalism. He actually went into the belly of the beast of these Antifa riots back in 2020, 2021, reported from places like Portland, just beaten savagely. And a Portland jury actually found that these Antifa attackers are not liable in his attack. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, full disclosure, I know Andy pretty well. We've been texting about this over the last 24 hours. He's a hero. Yeah. I hope your listeners look into him a little more. If you're not following him, he's Mr. Andy Ngo, NGO, on Twitter. And if you don't pay money to his Patreon account or buy his book, you ought to. This is a guy who straps on the camera and goes into the heart of some of the most dark and evil people in the country, Antifa. And he doesn't comment on it. He just displays the video for the rest of us to see what they're doing. And then when they're arrested, which is rare, he'll take their mug shots, which are public records, and put them on his Twitter feed so you know who these people are who are doing these things. And they hate him for it, and they seek to hurt him, injure him when he does it. He brought a lawsuit in Portland, which is a brave act in itself. A few of the defendants defaulted, which means they essentially agreed that they were responsible for having attacked him. And sadly, the trial last week found that they couldn't prove that the two people left in the lawsuit were the ones who injured him and attacked him on two different occasions. But that's because we know they put masks on and hoods, and they dress up like hoodlums, and it's hard to identify who they are. So if you don't know who Andy Ngo is, check him out on Twitter, go to his Patreon, or buy his book. He's truly an American hero in the modern era.
Mark Weaver with us, attorney, former DOJ spokesperson. His book is called A Wordsmith's Work, and you can get that on Amazon or straight from awordsmithswork.com. I wanted to ask you last week, and I didn't touch on this. I should have, and I really have not talked about it, but it was interesting. A Pennsylvania state judge ruled that Donald Trump is protected by presidential immunity for statements he made creating doubt about the 2020 election results while in office. Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas Judge Michael Erdos, E-R-D-O-S, ruled last week that 2020 election worker James Savage is unable to sue Trump over claims. Trump's immunity includes a tweet and other comments he made from the White House while a Pennsylvania State Senate committee met in November 2020, the judge also said. What does this say to you about this idea? Jack Smith's second indictment in Washington, D.C. is basically this, isn't it? This Pennsylvania state judge has already said Trump's within his constitutional right. He's protected by presidential immunity to say what he wants about the election. Isn't this exactly what Jack Smith is charging Trump over right now?
I just got an email from Fox News. They don't want you to report this, so please stop talking about the fact that there's a judge somewhere who says that the President of the United States might be immune for what he says.
And I referred to something 7 days out. This is a news story that's over 7 days old, so I may also be sued. Who knows for sure, yeah.
How dare you? Pennsylvania is one of the states where I'm licensed to practice law, so I'm familiar with that. A little shocking to know that a Philadelphia County judge would have said this.
Right.
I wouldn't have been shocked if it had been like a upstate, or even a Chester County judge. But I think he's stating the obvious. Good for that judge. Of course, often government officials are immune for things they say. All of Congress are immune from things they say when they're doing their job on the floor or in committees. And there are similar protections for presidents. And then, of course, there's this thing called the First Amendment, which the Supreme Court has said for decades protects speech about government and politics at the highest level of protection. And when I read this indictment, the indictment du jour against Donald Trump, I couldn't help but wonder, is the special counsel familiar with the First Amendment? Because the indictment suggests he's not.
So isn't it interesting that most, and I don't know if you, I think we've already talked about this, forgive me, but I've listened to several different folks in law talk about the merits or lack thereof in these different indictments. It seems the consensus is, even amongst people that don't like Trump, who are on the left as legal scholars, the consensus seems to be that this second indictment from Jack Smith in D.C. is the weakest of them, but it's the one that I'm most convinced they're going to get him on because they're going to do this in D.C. Trump's asking for a change of venue. They're probably not going to get it. This is an Obama-loving, Trump-hating judge, a jury in D.C. There's no way they don't convict him. Trump's attorneys know that. They don't want to do this in D.C. They want to go to West Virginia. But I keep hearing legal scholars say there's not much merit to this. There's more merit to the first indictment and the Mar-a-Lago documents, which I also disagree with. But your assessment of this, I think, here's my, again, one more time, I think a conviction is more likely on a far more spurious indictment in D.C. than the one in Miami. Your read?
I agree, and I've been thinking of penning an op-ed. I often write op-eds and try to get them placed in Newsweek and other places. And my latest op-ed that's kicking around in my head right now is the Constitution guarantees Americans a jury trial of their peers. And can you really say that Donald Trump has any peers in the District of Columbia? Probably the most Democratic and anti-Trump district in the country. And if you said to the liberals, if you said, what if a bunch of civil rights activists went down into the deep South, pick some county in the South that the left hates, and let's say they got in trouble with the police and that they got charged, would it be fair for them to have their trial down there with what the left would say were rednecks and rubes and Bible thumpers? Those are not my words, of course, but that's what the left would say. The left would say, well, no, that's not fair. That trial would have to be moved out of there and put into a place where it's the peers of the people who are being charged. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's happening in reverse in the District of Columbia. And I don't think this judge will do it, but there's a strong case that ought to be moved out of that venue into a different venue, perhaps one of the federal districts out in Virginia or some other place where it's more likely that the defendant, the former president, could say that he was having a jury trial of his peers.
And then along came Fanny. I think the only thing that I enjoy about what's coming with this fourth indictment for Trump is that the woman bringing it is called Fanny. I'll just enjoy that, the 12-year-old in me. So Fanny is going to bring another indictment, this one in Fulton County. What of this one? I mean, again, back to the Axios piece. Like the American people, even people that hate Trump, are like, okay, indictment, schmeitment. Like, one indictment, 700 indictments, whatever. Like, one may as well be 1,000 at this point.
Yeah, something probably is coming of Georgia. For those of you scoring at home, this is the grand jury that featured the forelady running around doing a media tour about what happened in the grand jury. Now, I'm a part-time special prosecutor in Ohio. I was in grand jury the other day on a very serious matter. And here's the rules about grand jury. Grand jurors commit a crime if they talk about what happened in grand jury. I haven't seen the forelady charged for that. So let's remember that this all started from an illegal action by the forelady.
Yeah, this is that bananas lady, that really wacky, weird, eyes darting around lady, right?
Yeah, she was the forewoman. She was very excited for us to tell us what they were talking about, and that she was giggling, hoping she could make the president raise his right hand in front of her, because the foreperson of a grand jury is the one who administers the oath to witnesses. So it started with that. Of course, this goes back to the First Amendment again. When the president made his phone call into Georgia with, I think it was the Secretary of State, and was saying, find I think it was 11,000 votes. His point was, I believe there has been fraud there, and I want you to go out and find it. That is a First Amendment protected statement. Weaponizing and criminalizing the First Amendment is a bad look, no matter what year you're in or what state you're in. But so many of these indictments de jure feature the criminalization of the First Amendment. It's wrong, but it's whatever stick they can do to beat down Donald Trump, and that's what's happening lately.
Yeah, in fact, yesterday I saw on Twitter, and I shared this, there was a gentleman called Orrin Kerr that tweeted, "We learned from this D.C. Circuit opinion that Jack Smith got a warrant to search Trump's Twitter account based on probable cause that there was evidence of a crime inside. Evidence could, in theory, include direct messages, both to and from, as well as draft tweets and IP addresses." And this guy, so when I tweeted this, I said, "Are you kidding me? Draft tweets, unpublished thoughts are now crimes, things he didn't even tweet?" To which he responded, no, I'm just saying that could be. You misunderstand. It's a possibility that the warrant could have included that. Listen, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt the warrant included that. I'm not going to give Jack Smith the benefit of the doubt at all. But I mean, that's what we're talking about with this guy. They're speaking and thinking about tweeting something a crime now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, again, someone who's been a prosecutor for many years, I will say that if you think that a criminal suspect is communicating with his conspirators via some platform, whether it's Signal or text or WhatsApp, or in this case, direct messages through Twitter, you better show a judge probable cause that there's reason to believe that there is the fruit or evidence of a crime. And I'd like to see what that probable cause statement was to a judge, because you can't do that without a warrant. And then the notion of Twitter being fined for not responding quickly enough is extremely unusual. That's extremely unusual. And this all just feels like overreach and it feels like a panic. We can't let this guy get back into the White House. We have to use whatever tools are at our disposal to stop him from ruling this country again. And this is third world stuff.
And one more time, if Fanny comes through in Fulton County, who goes first? Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, Jack Smith with his two, or Fanny? Like, how do you decide which order comes first?
Well, Alvin Bragg is an outlier because that's a state court case. But amongst federal court cases, the rule is whoever indicted first goes first unless the judges agree otherwise. They're all a part of the same federal judicial branch, and they should all be conferring with one another. But what's lost in this discussion is that the former president of the United States has to be able to defend himself appropriately in every forum. And if you rush one case while he's defending himself elsewhere, you are limiting his ability to defend himself. Oh, and by the way, he's out there campaigning for president. And so all of this should be subject to review by the U.S. Supreme Court. Whether it will happen before the election or not, I don't know. That might be the only forum in which he actually gets relief.
Mark Weaver, always a pleasure, and he's nimble enough. He can hang with any discussion, even stuff that we'd bring to him on the fly and throw at him. He can hang with it. Mark Weaver's a constitutional attorney, former DOJ spokesperson, author of a great book called A Wordsmith's Work, and we always appreciate your time and analysis, sir. Thank you.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Take a listen to some of this from Jake Tapper and Charlie Sykes now. I wasn't going to make Mark sit through it all, but listen to these two. This is Charlie Sykes from The Bulwark, the Never Trump publication that pretends to be somewhat conservative, and Jake as they navel gaze and chin stroke about their role in covering Donald Trump.
On all of this, there are people who say, well, you shouldn't give oxygen to the crazy things he says, but wait, I do think he needs to be held accountable. People do need to know what he's saying. On the other hand, let's talk about what happened last week when he showed up in D.C. We basically had the O.J. Simpson slow-moving Bronco moment where you had this endless sort of blank time with showing the empty podium, showing the car and everything. I want to read you something that my colleague JVL wrote last Friday in The Bulwark. He said, the O.J. Simpson case was the signal media evolution of our time. It established the template for modern broadcast news. Everything in our media world, from the treatment of Monica Lewinsky to the 2000 recount, to the weeks of 9/11 coverage, Trump's 2016 campaign, is directly descended from O.J. And he goes on to say, I would argue the broadcast media, as much as any other factor, has driven the collapse of American political life. It changed the incentive structures for both politicians and journalists. It created a sense of manic obsessiveness in the public, and it acted as an accelerant in our ongoing polarization. And then he goes to the wall-to-wall coverage of Donald Trump, Donald Trump's getting off the plane, Donald Trump's getting in the car. So what is your reaction to that? I kind of think of you as a media throwback, and I ask this as a media throwback myself. Yeah. What is the right balance to strike? What did you think of the wall-to-wall empty podium coverage that we got again last week?
Well, it's a complicated question because I don't see every one of these things as the same. For instance, like showing Donald Trump flying to Washington, D.C. in the motorcade, arriving for this historic, and in some ways tragic event where he was arrested and arraigned in the federal courthouse. That's news. It's not positive for him. It's not celebrating him. It's not celebratory. It's news. Now, is that the same thing as, for instance, that time that we all got rickrolled when he said he was going to acknowledge that Barack Obama was born in the U.S., right? And that was just, we were all just sitting around, and I don't know what MS or Fox or anyone else was doing because I was anchoring CNN or I was part of the team at CNN, but we were just sitting around watching an empty podium while Donald Trump was about to say something acknowledging the reality that Barack Obama was born in the U.S., which is not a proud moment for the media, I don't think, because we were being used by the campaign. And I mean, it's offensive on its face when you think about the fact that this was even a matter of discussion. Right? Barack Obama was born in Hawaii. I mean, like, we were all sitting around breathlessly waiting for him to acknowledge that he'd been perpetuating a racist lie for a decade. Does not speak well about us. And then there's another example, for instance, when he was arrested and arraigned in Florida.
Yes.
And then he stopped and went into this Versailles cafe, this Cuban cafe.
See, Jake is sensitive about this.
People saying happy birthday to him and this and that. And the value of that I question as well.
The value.
So I don't know that I agree with all of the criticism, but I certainly think that there are nuances and ways to talk about different
all right.
points.
Yeah, that's enough. This is hilarious. This is just adorable. Jake is effectively being called out here by Charlie Sykes. You know that I'm not much a fan of Charlie Sykes or the Bulwark, certainly, but Sykes has basically called Jake out for judgment of what is news and what isn't news. Basically saying, you understand, we both hate Trump, but you people have made him. You created this. You do this, don't you know? Sykes is making a great point here, actually. They made Donald Trump in many ways. Trump effectively, the first time, used these idiots because he was ears and eyes and ratings for them, and he was like crack cocaine. And anytime, if you go back and watch 2015 coverage of Donald Trump, I just watched something the other day, Trump walking on the set of Morning Joe. He's squeezing Mika. He won't let her go. He's like, come in here. And Joe's having a hearty chuckle at how much he loves Mika. Look at you. Aren't you beautiful? And she's, and they're just, remember, they went to the White House and had dinner. And they said, hey, we're getting married. And he said, well, I'll perform the service. Folks, this wasn't that long ago. Joe and Mika. Like sitting in Trump's lap, having dinner with him. These people dined out on Donald Trump. They made him. And now, Sykes says, do you think is it a little much that you guys like chase his car from Bedminster down I-95 to the Newark airport and then cover him landing at the airport, getting off the plane, getting back in the motorcade, all the way to the court, into the court, waiting at the podium for him to come out? You think maybe we're overkill on that? That's kind of an OJ thing. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Jake says, oh, no, that's news. That's news. It's historic and it's news. But then, knowing how ridiculous it sounds, because he's caught himself here, he's heard people like me calling him out repeatedly for saying after Trump's first federal indictment, he goes into a cafe and people are singing to him. How many times have I played this clip already, and I will continue to play it? And Jake knows it. Jake knows how bad it sounded when he said it. Remember?
This case isn't going to be settled legally in a cafe. It's going to be settled in the court based on the facts and law.
The folks in the control room, I don't need to see any more of that. He's trying to turn this in. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle, into a campaign ad. That's enough of that. We've seen it already. Let's go over again the 37 charges.
Yeah, and again, remember Rachel Maddow, same deal. When Trump had his speech at Mar-a-Lago after his first indictment, she did the same thing.
Is making remarks tonight from his home in Florida. As far as we can tell, and what we were prepared for here is that this is basically a campaign speech in which he is repeating his same lies and allegations against his perceived enemies. It is just getting started. So far, he's just giving his normal list of grievances. We don't consider that necessarily newsworthy, and there's a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things.
Right. So you've heard all this. So Charlie Sykes' point is what is the culpability you have in turning everything into an OJ moment? You're basically giving this oxygen when you chase his motorcade for 2 hours before you even hear a single word from him. And Jake says, "Oh, well, that's important. That's news." Versus when he gives a propaganda speech or people lovingly sing to him in a cafe after he's been indicted. That's not news. And we have a responsibility. A couple things. Number one, what they're doing when they do endless chasing of Donald Trump, and what they think they're showing is, look, it's the perp walk. Historic and serious. This man's about to be arraigned. And really what they don't know is all they're doing is boosting and boosting and boosting his profile and making people like me angrier and angrier and angrier at the way this man's being treated. And they think they're shaming him. They think chasing him like a criminal, showing up to court to be processed, they think covering him as though he's already a crook about to be thrown into prison, they think that's hurting him, you see? So they're committed to going wall to wall if they think the message they're sending is he's a criminal about to be thrown in lockup. But really, it has the opposite effect for tens of millions of voters. They're just getting angrier. So these idiots don't even know how angry they are making so many of the people watching. Similarly, when Trump gives a speech on his own turf, or he walks into a cafe and people are celebrating him, they don't want you to see that. They don't want you to hear any of that. Trump is not innocent. Trump should not be allowed to speak. Trump cannot be seen looking popular. Trump cannot be seen at rallies. Trump's rally speeches cannot be heard. Trump cannot be seen being sung to or celebrated in any way. That is not news, and we will not participate in propagandizing him in any way. So in some ways, they actually are doing the opposite strategy of 2015, where they loved him and wanted him on all the time. Now they're covering him like he's a crook on the run. But the problem is a huge swath of the country is cheering on who they perceive to be the felon. And it's like the guy who jumps into the outfield of a baseball game, and then security starts to give chase. What does the crowd in the stadium do?
They start cheering.
They cheer the guy running. They cheer the guy trying to evade security. And that's what's happening now. And the media doesn't even get it. And so when they say, we're not going to show you Trump, people liking Trump. We're not going to show Trump defending himself. We're only going to show you Trump being processed for crimes. I think this is just so funny to me that they go into this navel-gazing discussion, Charlie Sykes calling him out. Was it necessary? I couldn't believe it last week myself. Watching helicopters followed him for 40 minutes down I-95 to Newark Airport. Or not I-95. That would have been the Turnpike, right? Or wherever they were. But anyway, I think it was the Turnpike. But they chased the motorcade from the golf course to the Newark Airport for 40 minutes. All three networks were doing it. Like he was evading. It was the white Bronco. Al Cowlings. And all they do is just build the myth of the man. I mean, if you're another campaign in the Republican ranks, you're watching this going, I can't believe that. I can't catch a break. 40 minutes, that guy's car. 40 minutes. 3 networks, wall to wall with his car. I'm out here giving a substantive policy speech, and they won't pay a bit of attention to me. Remember Janet Yellen last week said she's strong, whatever that act. I can't even, can you do a Janet Yellen yet? Fast Eddie's a great impressionist and a great mimic. I don't understand her accent, though, where it comes from.
I strongly suggest that you stop making
That's
fun
pretty good.
of me.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Sounds a little like the guy in The Simpsons. What's his name? But anyway, she said that she strongly disagrees with Fitch and their downgrade and their rating. Everything's fine. Well, now Moody's is downgrading the credit rating of 10 small to mid-sized banks. What about all this downgrading? Charles Gaspirino, senior correspondent at the Fox Business Network. We lean on him for all kinds of insight like this. And we welcome him back. Charlie, thanks for your time this morning. Hi.
Well, hey, do you ever, Janet Yellen, at least the invitation of Janet Yellen, sounded like Fauci a little bit, like an effeminate Fauci.
Wait, have we ever seen them in the same room, Charlie?
Now, you should know both of them are from Brooklyn, so maybe that's the sort of lineage there.
I'm not sure we've seen them in the same room now that you say it. They could well be the same person. We don't know. I haven't seen him.
The same person. A little bit of transitioning going on here, right?
So
this is a morning show. I better not go there.
No, that's all right. Here's a little of what she had to say about the downgrade, and I'd love to get your reaction about both downgrades, actually.
Over the past few years, the American economy has seen an historic recovery from the depths of the pandemic downturn. Over 13 million new jobs have been created since January 2021. Our unemployment rate stands at 3.6%, near historic lows. Overall annual inflation has declined every month for the past year, and our economy continues to grow. In the longer term, the United States remains the world's largest, most dynamic, and most innovative economy, with the strongest financial system in the world. Fitch's decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States.
All right, so Fitch's decision is puzzling because all this stuff's so great, Charlie. What about that? And Moody's too now.
By the way, as you were playing that sound, I just saw the headline that consumer price index is up. Actually, it went up, ticked back up again. And we should realize that when she says the inflation is down. Inflation isn't down, and the rate of inflation is down. Prices are still very high, and they're ticking up still at a lower rate. So remember, that's why there's a disconnect between the public opinion polls on like how good the economy is, and this you keep hearing all this happy talk out of Janet Yellen and Joe Biden. Prices are still very, very high. They're very high because of all the stupid things that they did with printing of money on the Fed side. That wasn't directly tied to Janet Yellen, but they were supportive of what the Fed was doing in terms of printing money. But they also spent a lot of money.
Yes.
So that's why you have massive price increases with an inflation rate that is actually just fast. It's going up again. So, I think it's a little. She shouldn't be like taking victory laps now, because the public opinion, which is, by the way, they're not. Most people are not, being brainwashed by Fox or you. They look at their paycheck. They're working, but they have to work harder. They earn less because of inflation.
Well, what bothers me so much, Charles Gaspirino, is that gas prices are now ticking back up to, in some places over $4 a gallon or near it, and it's becoming kind of comfortable. This notion that this is where gas prices are and will stay. It bothers me deeply that normal is now flirting with $4 or exceeding $4 a gallon.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the environmentalists and the left want that to be the new normal. Yeah. I mean, listen, they think they want us all to believe that we should be chipping in with our hard-earned money toward their fantasies about how the world should work, and part of that is, no oil production. They really want, a zero carbon footprint, which is insane, particularly since, what's crazy about the environmental movement and the left is that there's a way to achieve what they want. It's called nuclear power, and they won't go there. I mean, they just won't go there. It just shows you how stupid they are. Electric vehicles aren't going to get us there because, you know what? Electric vehicles essentially hurt the environment. You have to strip mine and create electricity, strip mine for the cobalt and the stuff in the batteries, and strip and create electricity by burning coal because they won't let you burn natural gas. So, that's the problem I think that the left has economically. Most of their solutions to the economy leave a bad taste in people's mouths. And that's why, as much as she wants to say, we have record low unemployment, which we do, none of that was her doing. We were coming out of we printed so much money during the pandemic that the minute people went back to work, it was just like, it was the problem was inflation at that point.
Yes.
They also inherited a good economy from Donald Trump. So let's throw that out there too.
Charles Gaspirino,
opinion polls are opposed to what she's saying, more or less.
Senior correspondent at Fox Business Network, Charles Gaspirino with us. I just saw this stat today from Bank of America, and this is just their own analysis of their own clients. So this is just but one institution. Says roughly 16,000 customers during the first 3 months of this year made hardship withdrawals of 401k funds. Hardship withdrawals. 16,000 of their customers. What does that say to you?
Well, it says to me that inflation is still a problem. One of the problems with the way they've approached, getting rid of inflation is that, yes, they did it through mainly monetary policy. They did not do it through regulatory policy. One way to get rid of inflation is to increase the supply and lower regulations, drill more oil, stuff like that. The Biden administration won't do that. So the only thing left to really get rid of inflation is a very heavy hammer of the Fed raising interest rates. And that will almost undoubtedly, because you need a degree of deflation, because, as I said, the inflation rate is going down, but it's still ticking higher, and prices are already high. You need to deflate. The only way you deflate is essentially to create a recession, and we do have pockets of recessionary activity, which I think that reflects.
This I opened with this, Charlie, and I'll let you run on this question, and that is about Moody's downgrading credit ratings of 10 small to mid-sized banks. I don't even remember the context, and I don't know why, and I don't know if Mr. Wonderful is a guest of yours or Kevin O'Leary. He once said on Fox something kind of jaw-dropping. I think it was on Tucker's show. He said something to the effect of he didn't object to the idea of there being just 3 or 4 big financial institutions and the rest of small and mid-sized banking going away. I don't remember exactly how he justified that, but it sounded like a nightmare to me and strange from him. I know Tucker was a little taken aback when he heard it too. I don't like the idea of small and mid-sized banks struggling, being downgraded and going away, but it seems like they're being squeezed.
Well, they are being squeezed because they engaged in risk. When you keep interest rates as low as we did, banks like that, without the sort of scope of a J.P. Morgan or Bank of America will feel the impact. They will engage in risky lending. They have to meet capital requirements, so they'll invest in what's deemed low-risk securities that are very interest rate sensitive. I mean, this will devolve into an economics lesson, which I'm not sure your listeners want to get into. But that's the problem that a small bank has. It doesn't have the sort of scope and breadth of a J.P. Morgan.
So does he mean? I'm sorry to interrupt. If I could just dumb it down for me, what you're saying is maybe Kevin's position is small banks get people into big messes because they take risks that larger banks wouldn't?
Well, they all take the same risk. They just don't have the firepower to withstand the losses on the risk.
Okay, is
what he's saying. I don't know if I agree with that. This is a much more complicated thing than let's just have three banks. This is a dynamic economy. I mean, you want competition. You want to be able to go to your local bank and have a relationship with that guy. Yes, J.P. Morgan can open up a branch in small towns, but they often don't. That's not where the money is for them. So you do need small banks. Now the question is, does the government create incentives for small banks, or do you let the free market? And I think maybe that's what O'Leary was getting at. We're essentially bailing out, create a small bank business, and we kind of don't want that. Mm-hmm. But all things being equal, there's ways around this. There's ways that a small bank could make money without going out on the risk spectrum. And one of the ways to do it is to have the Fed, basically monitor these things better. You know what I'm saying? All these banks that failed were passing Fed stress tests. They were all given green lights by the Fed. I mean, what the hell is that?
Do you think ultimately the Fed or Washington would prefer a kind of a more centralized banking system? There's a lot of talk about, the doing away of the currency eventually. People have real fear that banking itself will just kind of cease to exist, that we're all going to be operating on this, electric cryptocurrency, and we'll all be social credit scored to death and that kind of thing. Do you go to that place or no?
I mean, you could see the dystopian sort of outcome of a one bank economy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, imagine if there was one bank. Janet Yellen would be able to control Jamie Dimon every day of the week.
Good Lord.
Do you really want that? You saw what happened in Britain with Nigel Farage, right? Mm-hmm. How he was sort of canceled out by the big banks over there. That's the Brexit leader. You don't want. This is why I think you need competition. You need smaller banks. You don't want the government in sort of partnership with a big financial institution, or you get all the stuff that we hate right now. You have, these big financial institutions are very easily swayed by the government to do their dirty work. I mean, you just don't want that. You want competition. You want a constitutional order where people's individual rights are protected. Individual rights don't get protected when there's one business running the show with the government.
Really grateful for your perspective always, my friend. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Charles Gaspirino, Fox Business senior correspondent. Okay, let me tell you, MyPillow has been absolutely outstanding to sleep on these last few weeks. The new MyPillow 2.0, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I sleep like a baby. Between the Giza Dream Sheets I'm sleeping on, the MyPillow body pillow that I keep tucked in between my knees and on my arm every night, between that and the MyPillow 2.0, this brilliant new pillow with the heat-dissipating fabric that keeps the pillow smooth and cool to the touch the whole night, tremendous. I love it. Even Dean now loves his MyPillow dog bed so much, he spends most of his time sleeping on it in the office. You go to MyPillow.com today, and you use my name, Chris Podcast. That's the promo code, Chris Podcast. When you do that, you save up to 66% on everything on the website, whether it's the slippers or the towels or the pillows or the anything. But on the pillow specifically, the MyPillow 2.0, you'll get a free MyPillow 2.0 when you order one if you use my name, Chris Podcast, as the promo code. So you can call them, you can go online. Either way, use the name Chris Podcast, and know this, that everything you buy at MyPillow.com comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. These are American-made products, every bit of it, American-made. And they are proud of what they stand behind as a product, and I can tell you they're really well-made quality products. So look, are they the cheapest products? Of course they're not. People get mad sometimes because they think the price point is a little higher. I understand. I mean, like, no pressure. I'm not telling you got to go buy it, but I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. So MyPillow products are really high quality, and they're made here in the country, and they're guaranteed to last. So, you can buy something cheaper that'll fall apart on you, and you'll have to buy it again and spend equal amounts of money, or buy a really quality American-made product right now at MyPillow.com and save using my name, Chris Podcast, or call MyPillow today if you'd rather. 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. 90 minutes, we're allowed 3 legally, and only for 7 days. We will never be allowed to use it after 7 days, and we will never allowed to be allowed to go back to it. I think Tucker has completely wrecked these people. I think Fox is out of their mind with terror and panic. They never, ever imagined that their star would, number one, that they'd part with him, and that when they agreed to pay him what was undoubtedly a handsome salary to just go away and be quiet, they never dreamt he would go to a place like Twitter and do long-form shows where he was not legally prohibited from going. Tucker has now drawn tens of millions of people to places like Twitter for content. I believe Fox is in a tailspin panic because they know that people like Tucker, places like the Daily Wire and places like The Blaze, places like Salem Media Group, who have created the Salem News Channel, the podcast network, of which I'm a member. I think Fox is desperate to try to figure out, how do we stop our content from being consumed in other places, and how do we force as many people to us as possible? And the only thing they could come up with was legally threaten everybody else who talks about this presidential debate from airing or allowing you to hear or providing you any analysis of anything that happens on their network. They're trying to prohibit that for us and force you to go to their website or go to their network exclusively to get the content from a public presidential debate forum. Look, I get it. We're all trying to hold on to audiences. We're all trying to secure audiences and the highest number of listeners and viewers for the longest amounts of time that we can, so that advertisers will find us desirable so that we can make money. We're all in the commercial space. Everyone understands this model. But it's never been done like this before. No news network has ever brought you a presidential debate and told everyone else like us who cover it the day after, we're only allowed 3 minutes. Otherwise, everyone must go to their website and everyone must go to their network to watch it, and no one is allowed to talk about it or air more than 3 minutes of it ever again, and you'll never be able to go back to it ever again. Never. You can only watch archives. You can only rewatch it. You can only catch it here. That's never happened on a debate. Now, again, if it's an exclusive interview, you want to say, I got an hour with the Pope, I don't know, Laura Ingraham talks to the Pope for an hour exclusively on Fox. Okay, I understand the exclusivity there. This is a presidential debate. Muscling conservatives and Republicans to tune into them is just sheer weakness and desperation and terror, in my opinion. And I can't be quiet about it. This is not, I hate to use the word fair, but the term is actual fair use. This is unfair to tell all of us with audiences, and I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, podcast hosts, digital hosts, YouTube live streamers, radio hosts, on behalf of everyone in this business, whoever you listen to in conservative media besides me. All of us are going to want to talk about this presidential debate on Fox the next day, and Fox is prohibiting all of us legally from doing so. And I find that outrageous, and I would think that all of my colleagues would share in that. Heretofore, not so much, but I don't know how many people even know about it. I don't know if the GOP knows about it. And all I can presume is that Tucker just broke them. Tucker has absolutely just made them twitchy now. They can't, because he went over to Fox, or he went from Fox to Twitter, and now millions of people have gone there and abandoned them, and they're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do to stop? Okay, here's what we do. We secure the rights to the presidential debate that everybody that's voting Republican wants to see, and stop anybody from seeing it or airing anything that we air. They've all got to come to us to see it, download it, or watch it. Now, is that, I mean, I guess, number one, I don't think it legally holds up. To be perfectly honest with you, I think that could be challenged in court, and I hope that it is. But number two, is that a position of strength? Is that, we're going to take a public forum, a public hearing with public officials debating who would be the major party's nominee and go on to try to be the president. Is that a position of strength from a news outlet? Or does that sound like a really, really desperate, frightened entity that's trying to bully the universe of competitors and force their viewers, more importantly, bullying you? You want to see what these people on the debate stage have to say? You must watch us and only us. And you can't even hear what other people think about it in reaction to it. You got to come here. I don't know. I don't mean to belabor this, but when attorneys run businesses, businesses fail. And Fox News is now being run by attorneys, it seems to me, not programmers. And I'll leave it at that.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.